Hi, my name is Jenai Cutcher. I'm the Executive and Artistic Director of the Chicago Dance History Project. CDHP is a not-for-profit research organization dedicated to investigating, documenting, and presenting dance histories of Chicago. We are working with a sense of urgency to preserve as much of our artistic and cultural heritage as we possibly can, primarily through facilitating people being able to tell their own histories in their own words. We're building a digital archive of original and collected materials, and that includes a lot of videos of interviews, as well as donated collections from folks within the community. As you can imagine, a lot of our original collection stems from the programming that we do, primarily oral history interviews, usually one-on-one, with all members of the dance community, choreographers and dancers, but also educators and advocates and documenters and writers and students and teachers, you name it. So far, we've done over 150 of those one-on-one oral history interviews, as well as our public programming, which are things like panel discussions and lecture demonstrations and exhibits. We record everything on camera and produce videos from those events and public programming. So you can also think of CDHP as being part production house. And in fact, speaking of production, with me today is Sean Rafferty, our digital media production manager, who definitely deserves a shout out for everything he does, but also because he plays an integral role in the story I'm here to tell you today. Early in 2020, CDHP was really on a roll. I had just returned from Europe and I conducted our 131st oral history interview with John Neumeier in Hamburg. But during the pandemic, CDHP lost the ability to perform its primary tasks and to maintain the heart of our organization, which was those in-person, on-camera oral history interviews and public events. So we had to think of new ways to work, just like everybody else. I was not willing to compromise and continue conducting those oral history interviews over Zoom for a whole host of reasons, which if you're curious, you can ask me about in the Q&A on October 29th. So after taking a step back, we started to work on our backlog of archives and do all of that kind of work. But I think around August of 2020, I started to float the idea to our staff and board of conducting an interview marathon. We realized that we could combine a lot of these efforts into one. So what was the interview marathon? The interview marathon happened on January 31st, 2021, and it was simply me interviewing people for, I think, 7.5 hours. So this was a live streamed event that started at 11 o'clock in the morning. I was live streaming from the Auditorium Theater, which was of course vacant. And we had 46 guests join us from around the globe in short one-on-one interviews or group discussions that were centered around a particular theme.
I always have felt that everything I know about art, I learned growing up in Chicago.
I mean, I can still remember being in the seat and just being like, I want to do that one day.
It required a true commitment of heart to work there, and you were glad to do it.
The audience connects with the individuals on stage and feels like they get to know them through the process of a show.
Don't y'all forget that there's rhythm in everything. Give it a big eye. Ooh, boo, ooh, stop.
This definitely was an all hands on deck type of experience, and even the board got involved, as well as contractors for the day. So we sort of treated the interview marathon like a performance, which is what we know best. I think that's the advantage of an archive being run by artists and performers, is that we know how to put on a show. And so the whole day was sort of treated as a performance. So we hired a stage manager and a technical director, and we had a green room and we had a stage, and all of our participants had call times. Folks could sponsor certain interviews, and we also asked for a small donation in order to access the link during the day. I will say that as a small organization, adding the fundraising element to an event like this made a big impact on our budget. And so I'm really grateful for everybody who worked hard to raise these funds and to everybody who donated to be a part of the day. What we hadn't really done before was conduct these interviews publicly. And so a lot of the preparation went into that. And we did have people joining all day long from all over. And so the technical aspect of working people in and out of the Zoom rooms and on stage was something we wanted to make sure we understood back and forth. And we had that choreography down so we could focus on having an organic and spontaneous conversation that shifted participants every 15 minutes. It was an incredible way to generate more original content for the archive. So we were building the archive throughout this whole process. And in any given year, CDHP produces or collaborates with other organizations on producing anywhere from 4 to 6 events a year. So probably in a year, we do generate 8 hours of original content from events. We did it in a single day this year. We weren't just adding new material to our archive, but we were also able to feature items we already had in our collections. It wasn't intended to be, but it was a bit of a public flex. Usually I'm conducting one interview at a time that lasts for 2 or 3 hours. This time we did 30 in 8, and 7.5 hours is a long time for anybody to be live streaming, and we did build in small and quick breaks, but they were breaks for us through using B-roll and items from our collection. So we played clips we had already made, we scrolled through photos from our collection. We really utilized what we already had and took the opportunity to feature some of those items for the public. A lot of what we do here at CDHP, like every archive, is behind the scenes. So when we typically do one-on-one oral history interviews, they're in somebody's living room or at a studio, and it's not open to the public. When we do public events, we are very happy to have an audience of anywhere from 40 to 60 folks. But again, we're not gaining wide exposure. And in 2020, CDHP turned 5 years old, and one of our biggest goals for that year was to raise our profile. The interview marathon definitely helped to raise the profile of CDHP in a number of ways. First of all, we had a global audience, and I don't think that this type of event would have worked in person anyway. The marathon was for us behind the scenes or for me on camera, but not for the audience. I had sort of envisioned this as a day where people would log in and log out, make sure that they caught their favorite person in an interview or carried their laptop with them from room to room during the day. So in that sense, we really expanded our reach because anybody throughout the world was able to participate in this event. That also went for our interviewees and our guests, and we did make some strategic decisions based on our goal to raise our profile. And what I really wanted to do was convey that this type of work and these type of collections are not only important, but really exciting too. CDHP is built on ideals of democracy and egalitarianism. We are dedicated to providing a voice for everybody in the Chicago dance communities to tell their histories. And so that means we're interviewing folks behind the scenes whose names are never mentioned and who aren't necessarily in the spotlight, as well as those who are. And the interview marathon was actually just a microcosm of our mission and our work overall in that sense. We had people participate whose names you might recognize, along with people whose names you might not. But what we want to convey in everything we do is that everybody is important in this dance ecosystem. This proved to be the perfect venue and the perfect opportunity to add some of those folks with Chicago dance histories, but who have more of an international profile to our archive. So we were able to interview Twyla Tharp and Robert Battle and Mark Morris, and it took 20 minutes of their time. One of the major lessons we learned after the interview marathon was over is that people are actually hungry for these types of events and this type of learning experience. What it does is sort of pull back the wings on a performative form such as dance. And people love to hear more about the companies they watch on stage and the performers whose careers they've followed for years. And so there was a real hunger to this too from the very beginning. On the day of, I was really moved by how many people from the community, and not just here in Chicago, but throughout the world, were able to join in and participate in the interview marathon. Throughout the day, we had over 500 unique viewers, and everybody just seemed to love being able to gather together with their communities, and that I don't think we quite anticipated the impact that was going to have, but that was really one of the most special things to have come from the day, for sure. Mayor Lori Lightfoot declared January 31st Chicago Dance History Project Day in the city of Chicago. And the enthusiasm we were met with prior to the event and during it continued long after. I mean, throughout this whole year of 2021, we've seen an increased interest in our archives and in our materials. People are requesting interviews and engaging with the clips that we publish online. You can watch them on our website and our Vimeo channel, and on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can follow us at Chai Dance History. As we are adding to the archive, we're learning in the process. I conduct interviews to find out things that we don't yet know. And the interview marathon was a great learning opportunity, not just for the 500 people who joined in, but also for us at CDHP. None of this history has been investigated in any type of formal way or way that we can preserve for posterity. And so this original research is hopefully going to go a long way toward educating the public and the audiences for generations to come. Our goal is to represent as many folks and as many styles and as many ideas about Chicago dance history as we possibly can. And I feel like the interview marathon allowed us to add exponentially to our archive in one day, although it did take months of planning. So we did represent 46 more people and add 30 interviews to our collection. Would we do it again? Probably not this year, but yeah, I think so. I think we're still recovering from the first one, which did take a lot of effort, but it had a lot of reward to it as well. I think what we all learned from this too is that we can bring the public into the archival process. We can show them how it's made and how it's done, and they can be a part of it every step of the way. They don't just have to come in at the end once something is recorded or researched or preserved or produced after the fact, and use it on that end of things. They can be a part of the entire process, and that's how I really like to work best anyway. Underneath everything we do, I am trying to communicate to folks that archives are much more than what their preconceived notions might be of a big, fat, dusty old tome chained to a desk in the back of a big, dusty library somewhere. Archives are fun, and research is fun, and generating archives is fun. And I hope most everybody involved in all aspects of this interview marathon had fun that day. I know I did. And, you know, the chat was full of activity, and folks did have fun. I mean, what else are you going to do on a snow day in the middle of a pandemic anyway? In a time of such isolation and empty stages, one of the best things about this event was that we really did feel like we had all gathered together to celebrate this art form we love so much.
People stick together and they hang together for one another. There's intense support, and it's a beautiful thing about the Chicago dance community. It really is.
That sense of welcoming, that sense of really appreciating what we do on that stage, and appreciating that we appreciate Chicago.
Chicago is fabulous. I'm recommending it. Chicago, yes.
It's our conversations with ourselves that helps us fight for that different thought. The world needs our different conversations. They need us to reflect how we can come together in our differences. They need us right now. Art is necessary.